What it is, y'all, it's your old boy Pilk, and I'm coming back with another DANMACHI episode review. Today we're going to be reviewing episode 3, season 4 of DANMACHI. My hair ties in my hands, so we're just going to eject that over there. Um, let it flow. So basically, what winds up happening is the beginning of this episode, we get this crazy basically a recap of what happened last episode. It feels like a really aggressive recap. The recap takes way too long, in my opinion. Recap should be like, 30 to 45 seconds, one and done. Here's what happened. Chigusa's now infected, and let's go. But instead, we get like this 2.5 minute long, or so it felt, recap about the last 5 minutes of the episode from last week, and I think that's a bit much, especially with how much substance we got in this episode. So if I needed to criticize one thing in this episode, it would definitely be that. Also, I did notice some foibles in the animation, but it's to me it wasn't that big of a deal. It was a 9 out of 10. It was a minor nuisance to somebody that actually does know animation, but it really wasn't horrible. And even the money shots, like the shot behind us, was absolutely like nailed, almost perfectly. So, JC staff. Normally, I'm kind of like like the last season. I was like, this season they seem to have it together, at least for these first 3 episodes. So I'll give them that. So 9 out of 10 for the animation in this episode. Very, very, very good. Did enjoy it quite a bit. Story wise, I did not like as much of the recap, but let's just get into the story, because the story here is absolutely phenomenal, and it's a huge transitional portion of the story. Because obviously now they're into the dungeon. They met up with, I can't remember the elf guy, but they met up with his group, and his group's been absolutely wrecked. You find out the monster's basically hunting adventurers to try to steal the magic stones, the iris, that and consume them, and basically it seems like gain more and more and more. I say sentience, cognizance, whatever, because this is a monster that does not act like monsters. This is a monster that thinks. Now, it's not a Xenos, at least based on what we can tell right now. It's definitely not a Xenos. It doesn't seem to be attacked by the other monsters, and even when the monsters do come close, it actually is like the first to strike. There doesn't seem to be any real. He's still got the red glowing eyes and all that. There doesn't seem to be any animosity from the other monsters towards him, but he is definitely hunting other monsters and their stones, which is why he's hunting the adventurers, because basically all the little stones that they get, he's basically trying to acquire that, and then he eats them and just basically gains more power. So that whole thing is given to us in a really brief amount of time. But Chigusa and the elf guy, and even the elf guy's party, as we find out later on in the episode, are all infected, and they're basically given 2 options. One, fight the monster, defeat him, and hope being the operative here, that the vines then dissipate, because the going logic that they give is that those moss monsters in the middle levels will actually sometimes spawn other monsters, but when you kill the original, the copy dies. So they're thinking that the vines will probably dissipate when the monster's killed. But they also say that there's a distinct possibility that might not work, and they would have to then go back to the surface. And we already know that was a day trip to get where they're at, so we can surmise it's at least a day, if not more so, to get back up to the surface and then seek help that way. So either way is a risky situation, because even if they get to the surface, there's a possibility maybe that doesn't work. So they do decide to go to the surface, but then the elf guy's like, hey, my party is still down here. There's, they need help. We can't abandon them. And so the party eventually makes the decision, kind of led by Belle and Aisha a little bit, that they need to go further into the dungeon. They need to go help them out. But ultimately, that leads them into a trap. And yes, the monster sets them a trap. So that's just an idea of how different this monster is and how much closer to the Xenos this monster is, though he's still very much antagonistic. And to be fair, most of the Xenos, with the exception of a few, seem to be pretty, I say docile, but pretty, friendly might not even be the proper word, just not as hostile as the monsters are. But he's still got the red glowing eyes. He still seems extremely hostile. I think it's just, if I had to guesstimate, it's probably like the transitional stage between where he's at now and the Xeno stage, which would probably come after his reincarnation. Now, I say its reincarnation. But and those of you that have read the light novels, don't spoil anything in the comments, please, guys. Leave the light novel spoilers to yourself. We do have places in the Discord if you want to join the Discord where you can discuss all that. But at the moment, we want to keep the comment section, free and clear for the people that are enjoying the anime and don't necessarily want to be spoiled on the upcoming portions of the story, especially considering the light novel often. Goes a lot deeper than even the anime does. So, no spoilers in the comment, please. It's just my personal request. Now, to get back into it, basically, they decide that Oka and they're going to fight the smaller monsters. Belle and Aisha, they're going to go the front line. They're going to go fight the big monster, and then the Moss monster, and then basically everyone else is going to double time it back to another room. Well, first they said, we're going to stay here, and Aisha's like, that's a dumb idea. Y'all need to get out. Y'all need to just leave this portion of the dungeon and go somewhere safe, and then make sure that everyone's fine. And in the middle of this, they actually come across the elf guy. I still can't remember his name. They come across his other party, or two of the other members of his party, and what looks like the monster asleep. And as we find out, that's a trap. It's one of the other members of the party dressed up to look like the monster, and then the monster pops out of the stream that's next to them. And this is really cool. You see Bell like basically 180. His foot starts to slide back, starts to glow, and you hear the bong. So he's charging his Argonaut skill. And one thing I will say, in the light novel for episode 2, they do mention that his Argonaut skill takes 2-3 minutes. It used to take 3. I think they said it takes 4 minutes now to fully charge. But you start to get the idea, he can use it even when it's not fully charged and whatnot. So the long and short of it is he's charging his power, and then he races in. And before much of anything else can happen, the monster seems to understand that he is outclassed. So he more or less captures Belle. They dive into the water, and one thing leads to another. He basically takes one of his vines and chucks Belle down into that stream. And as even this shot you can see behind me, Belle basically emerges into a lower section of the dungeon where one of the waterfalls are, and is just chucked into one of the dungeon's lower levels. So the party's like, is he dead? Is he still alive? What happened? They eventually seem to come to the realization that this is going to take more than that to kill Belle. Even Aisha says he's stronger than I am at this point. Hate to admit it, but Aisha's like, he is stronger than I am. And they decide to leave. They decide the best thing at this point is to just go away. The monster's going to come back, but they've got all the party members, even the other guy's party members. In fact, they come across the third guy, the dwarf that was at the guild. They come across his party. A lot of them are infected, and so they start heading back to the exit of the dungeon. Meanwhile, our hero is now, he's stuck in that lower level. In fact, he starts getting attacked by these demonic hummingbird-looking things that Ina does warn him about, and even says these are one of the fastest things in the dungeon. You do not want to mess with this. And this is where one of the things I really love about Belle is you start to get this idea that Belle from season 1 just kind of rushed in and off, and he got his posterior just handed to him. Season 2, Belle had to it wasn't about the dungeons anymore. It was about the people and about the just horrible things that people can do to one another. And then Belle had to just rush in and save the day. And he does rush in. A lot of times he doesn't plan, he doesn't strategize, he doesn't think, he just rushes in and tries to overpower them with just his abilities. And in War Game and in the Red Light District and all that, it works to an extent, but it works mostly because of the support and help that he gets. Season 3, we see once again that he just kind of tends to rush in without thinking much. But here he starts to develop a little bit more. He's like, what would eyes do? What would they do? People are relying on me. Things are happening. And then he really starts to plan, and he gets this interesting moment where he's stuck behind the crystal, and those little demonic birds are flying at him. He's been beaten up. He's taken one to the arm. He's now got a gash in his cheek. He's been absolutely threatened and beaten. And he's like, if I stay here, I'm going to get killed. So he has to come up with a plan, and actually manages to defend himself, and even gets a dead direct hit on one of the birds, which is really a clue that how much Bell has progressed. Like, when we first met him, he was a level 1. He was just getting ruined in the cave. Now he's a level 4, and even maybe like starting to progress close to not level 5, but really starting to like get more and more and more powerful, thanks to his basically his unique skill where he's able to level up pretty fast. So that is more or less where we're left. The only exception to this is the Little Mermaid girl, the one that was touted in the teaser for the season and is in the openings and all that. We finally meet her, and clearly, as I know, she's got the more humanized characteristics and all that. She's got a personality, so to speak, and that's kind of where we're left off. Belle defeats the birds, and he's now face to face with his next damsel in distress, as I'm going to surmise, because that's the way this always turns out. There's always the season that has the one damsel in distress, and then Belle has to go save her and save the day. So that is, or in season 1, I guess he was the damsel in distress, but nevertheless, very, very, very good episode. Like I mentioned, I believe at the beginning, animation had a couple foibles, but like 9 out of 10. The story's phenomenal. I'm going to give that a solid 9 out of 10. I do know that they skip a lot of stuff from the light novel, but a lot of it is just flowery world building stuff you don't necessarily need. I will say, episode 2 could have been twice as long as it was, but I don't know if it would have made an interesting episode if I would have to be critical. So while they did skip a lot from the light novels for episode 2, I think for the sake of the narrative, they did right here. And I can't see a huge amount that right off the gate that they skipped from the light novels here in episode 3. There was some, but I'm trying to think right off the top of my head. I'm really bad about this because, I can always, like, whenever I finish recording, there's always like, yeah, but what about that thing? What about that thing? What about that thing? But nevertheless, right off the top of my head, it was thus far really good. And I'm coming right off the hype of watching the episode. So maybe there's something I was missing, something I don't remember. But the adaptation seems really good. We know that Amori is the script supervisor here. So we know he's going to take very good care of this. But all in all, very nice episode. I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed this a lot. Like, the few faults there were totally excusable and just an absolutely spectacular episode. But let me know what you guys thought in the comments section down below. Like, share, all that good stuff. We'll be back next week with episode 4 of season 4, and I will see you all then.